Yo pienso en tu mirada, cómo tú te llamas. Solo quiero verte a mi lado, mi cama.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Zouk. I'm very excited to share this podcast with you because we have not one, not two, but three exceptionally talented Zouk artists on the line for you. We have Joanna, Christina and Anna. Now this episode actually was about 2 hours long, so we're going to split it into two parts and we'll release the next one next week. So I hope you enjoy. Now it took ages to get everybody together because we are in 4 completely different parts of the world. So Christina, whereabouts are you at the moment?
So my name is Christina Montoya, and I first saw Zouk here in LA. Actually, it was Shani who did a performance at one of the local bachata festivals, and I was just very inspired by that piece. It was like a lamba piece, and it was like one man dancing with 2 girls, and I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. I have to learn it. And then I did some research, and I found her classes were 2 hours from where I was at the time, which was just too much for me. But then at one point, Juana Vasquez and Igor Fraga, who is my old partner who I worked with for a long time, and my first teachers, they opened up a class in Orange County, which at the time was an hour and a half away from me. So I decided one day to go to class, and I didn't know anybody, but I just really wanted to learn. And from there, it was a very small, welcoming, warm, and loving community. And it was definitely just a new atmosphere. I did like salsa, bachata, and kizomba, but for me, just the people, the atmosphere, the dance, the music, everything was just perfectly right for me in that moment. And from that first day, I was so hooked on the dance and just completely mesmerized.
How old were you when you found Zouk?
How old was I? Oh my gosh. I think, was I 20? I was 20. Yeah, I was 20 years old. Because Zouk is like, in many places, it's like a small family, in each community. So maybe when people come in, they don't feel like they're part of the family yet. So it can maybe be a little bit intimidating, especially for the people who are already dancing for years. And then new people come in and they're like scared of head movements and things like that. But I want to find ways for people to really feel comfortable coming into the dance. And I just feel like when we have either teachers or students, or I feel like mainly it's people with a larger following of people in the community, bringing up these topics on a public platform, it kind of makes people see them and think, like from an outside perspective, okay, do I even want to try this dance, So I feel like that's something that's kind of been trending lately in the community.
Especially that in Zouk, we use a lot of spine, like our spine, especially for the ladies. We do a lot of deep back bends and all the head movements, and it's a very sensitive part of our body. So when the leaders do it, they should really know what they do. So I really believe that beginners shouldn't lead head movements.
As far as teaching head movement and things like that, first of all, I totally agree with what Joanna just said here, which is actually why I do Zouk Babes, which is basically a followers technique performance team. But really, like the technique in the followers is the same as the lead. You know what I mean? So it's that's why I don't like to gender specify and say ladies styling, and because it's not just styling, it's really about the technique that we bring to the dance. So we can execute the movements on our own, because it's really important as a follow to know how to use the movement in our own body without like putting our body in danger, and being able to find our balance and things like this. That way, when we go to dance with someone, it's much easier, and we're not trying to rely on another person to help us execute movements. But also as far as like when we are teaching head movement, I do think it's important for beginners to understand um, that head movement does require many different techniques from the your feet to all the way to your head. So throughout your entire body, and how you use them all at the same time just comes with body awareness. So being a beginner and coming into trying to just do head movement right away, sometimes they do it because they see it and they just want to do it because they see everyone else doing it. So it's important to still be educated as a beginner that, hey, this is not just, this can be potentially dangerous and harmful if you don't actually know what you're doing. I have done like head movement safety classes before, which are basically like introductory head movement classes. And that is really helpful for both the leads and follows. So the follows can understand what they are supposed to feel. And so the leads can understand what they're supposed to be doing. But also for the follows, we always address like, look, if you're not comfortable doing head movement and you're a beginner follow, just let your lead know, I'm not comfortable doing this yet, so please no head movement. And if they start leading it, then it is your decision whether you want to follow or not. You do not have to do anything as a follow that you don't want to do. Like I said before, with balance, especially when you're a follow, like imagine taking class as a follow, you're learning, and even as a lead too, but specifically teaching or speaking from a follower's experience, you're learning like a new head movement or something. So you have to learn how that head movement works in your body. You have to learn how you're keeping your balance. You have to learn your lines in your body in that movement. And then you also have to learn how you're actually following and what you should be feeling from your lead, and like it's just so much
And how
information
to do
to
it with
take
high
in.
heels.
Yeah, oh yeah, and if you're doing it in heels, it's another thing too. Yeah, so it's so much information to take in at 1 hour class, you know what I mean, which is less than an hour because you do the warm-up and things like that, and by the time you're actually practicing the movement, you're not practicing the movement for a whole solid hour. So from a follower's perspective, knowing the movement in your body is important for actually being able to understand what your body can do and why it does that, how you can prevent
Exactly.
injury from your body. And it also helps with later on when you're going to become more comfortable with it a lot quicker, and you can bring more style to your dance and you can express yourself easier in your dance. It'll help so much. And same with the lead. From the lead, you can still do the same thing, like learning how the body works. You can bring more flavor into your dance, and you can understand how to follow your follow, which is super important as a lead. When you understand the technique in your body and the follow's body, and it makes the dance very comfy.
Christina, what about you? How did you go from student to teaching, and then also how do you grow to kind of getting yourself around the world?
Yeah, so first of all, so like I said, Igor and Juana, I took my first classes with them, and very early in, I was like 3 months in learning, and Igor just calls me one day and he says, "Hey, how serious are you about learning Brazilian Zouk?" And I was like, "I really want to learn. Like, I love this dance." And he's like, "Well, I'm looking for someone who I can train to compete, perform, and maybe teach with." So I just felt like that was just, I don't know, like my prayers answered or something. Like I was really excited to be given that opportunity and really blessed, I felt, and really grateful for that. So when I first started learning, like I said, I was only like 3 months in. we were training, privately, him and I, for like anywhere from 6 to like 15 hours, like every weekend.
I thought you were going to say every day. I was like, wow.
No, oh my gosh, I wish. But so every weekend, because he lived 2 hours from me. So every weekend I would go to his house and stay the night for the weekend, and then I'd come back to my place and do my regular Monday through Friday stuff. And even throughout the week, I was coming back home to train myself at the gym, like 1 hour, 2 hours a day. So at the time, I was already teaching bachata. But yeah, I was very, very in love with Brazilian Zouk, and I think people saw it before I realized it, because later on, when I decided to make the transition and say, okay, I am not doing bachata anymore, I'm not teaching bachata anymore, I'm going to change my life and just do Brazilian Zouk and focus on this because this is my passion. Everybody was like not surprised, but it was like the hardest decision for me. But rewind a little bit before that. So we were training like all the time. I was training every day. And that's from a very young stage. So to be guided by somebody like that was extremely helpful. He gave me all the tools that I needed to help me learn and grow and develop my dance, from a very early on in learning. And the idea was to compete at the LA Zouk Congress US Open Semi-Pro Division. And I was scared out of my mind. One, because it's a competition, and that scares me. And two, because it's like, what? This is like, I'm new, and like, this is like crazy for me. It's too, it's too much, like, how could I do this, So actually, he did the choreography, and we trained all the time. And we won first place, and that was actually a massive confidence booster for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe that actually happened, And, at the time I was such a baby, and that really inspired me to want to continue growing and learning Zouk. So right after that competition, Igor moved back to New York. And so there I was, Zouk partnerless, and our little community of 15 people, just barely learning Zouk. And I was just like, I was so sad. I was very, very sad. Like, I almost felt like I went into this little depression, and because I didn't have him there anymore. And, we had shared so much in such a little time. So I was like, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to learn Zouk. So at the time, Kim from New York, she was doing, and Igor were doing this teacher's training. So I did the teacher's training there. And actually, I was just, after that, I was like, okay, I need to find ways, any way I can, to travel for Zouk and go anywhere, no matter where it is or what I have to do or how much money I have to spend. I was just so in love and determined to learn this dance. And not necessarily because I knew I was going to like teach it and like I wanted to really pursue my career in it, because like I said, at that time I was teaching bachata and I was like so happy with that. But yeah, there was something deeper inside me that just kept itching for more. And that later on, so I traveled a few more places, and then later on, actually, I went to the ZNL festival, which is now Zouk MX, where I met Anna, and I remember that was my
she
first.
was such a baby.
I was such a baby, and that was like my first real Zouk Congress experience, and oh my gosh, I lost my head.
I lost my shit.
Yes, yes. So basically, the real inspiration that I had from that event
Was Anna.
was um, no, not entirely, but yes, she was very inspiring to me. But that wasn't this particular moment I'm talking about. um, so I was just kind of like, so I was trying to take privates with everybody and, learn from everybody, take all the workshops, dance all night, everything with everyone. And there was just one night where I was like talking with Dagino, and I said, I just love this dance so much, but it's very small where I live, and I just want to continue to grow and maybe one day like really be able to teach the dance and like spread this dance to other people, because I know there's so many more people who will love this dance too. And I asked him, like, what do you think I should do? Like, what do you recommend? And he told me a few things. Like, he gave me some words of advice that I just really took to heart. And he told me to find a partner and train with that person. He told me to um, go travel and go dance with everybody. He said, take all the teachers or all the workshops from many teachers and many styles to learn from many people. He said, take private lessons. He said, actually, I think he told me to find someone who I can start growing a community and teaching with. And like I said, it was very small back then, and I was a baby, but it was very small. Um, and then he told me, but most of all, enjoy.
Yeah.
So, which was always the hardest part for me. But yeah, I really listened to what he said, and literally the next day, like I bought my two next congresses, and like I went to New York, which was Fall for Zouk at the time, and then it was Boston. So like just immediately, literally the next day, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to listen to this. So with that, like that's where the snowball just kind of happened, and I just kept craving for more and more. And by the time I went back to New York for the Fall for Zouk Festival, where Igor was living, um, I was in a place where I was just like, man, I really love this dance, and I think like this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I also was in a place of where, man, I really love this city. New York is just magical to me. And somehow, Alex Chang, he saw that in my eyes, in my body, or whatever. And I didn't even really talk to him a whole lot. But he was like, if you ever want to move to New York, like I can help you. Just let me know.
That's nice.
And it was like just crazy, because I was like, how did he know that this was like in my head, So I thought about this, and I was like, okay, I will only move to New York if Igor wants to partner together, because otherwise I feel like there's no real reason for me to move. So after talking with many people, and actually Kaio was one of them, and he told me, he really asked me, this was the turning point for me. He really asked me, what are you doing with bachata, and why are you doing it? And there was a point where I just really didn't know anymore.
Yeah.
And I was away from bachata for like a week, and I had time to really soak myself into this Zouk world. And that was the point where he said, look, you're doing bachata and you're doing Zouk and you're learning Zouk right now, but imagine how much better you can get if you just spent all your time improving in Zouk versus trying to do both.
Yeah.
And that's when it really sunk in, and I was like, oh my gosh. So if Igor wants to work together, I'm gonna move. So I talked with him, and we agreed, and 6 months later, I moved to New York to continue pursuing and working and learning Zouk. And of course, in between that, I traveled to Europe, and which is not where I met Joanna. I think it was the next time I met her. Um, and it was my first time in Europe, and I was just like in a whole new world of Zoukers, because, like I said, Zouk was very small in the U.S. then, and Zouk was much bigger in Europe, and I was like, whoa, my mind just exploded, and I was like, these people have no idea, like, what is coming next, hopefully, for the U.S., if it's, years to come with much more training and people who take it a little bit more seriously. So with that, like, I really just continued training and learning and taking privates, and thankfully I had a lot of supportive people and people who really guided me in the right direction, whether they realized it at the time or not. I'm really thankful for everyone, and especially Igor, because he was the one who, like, saw me and believed in me first when seriously I knew nothing. um, but yeah, from then on, I was in New York for about a year, and actually Igor and I, within that year, we did like a 5-month tour, and that was the second time I went to Europe. And we were teaching in Europe, we were teaching in New York, and then it came to a point where I knew I had to move back to my home in LA, for a few different reasons. Like, life was, first of all, easier for me in LA. Second of all, I had been in a long distance relationship with my boyfriend, and still current boyfriend, at that time. And I was like, man, like, I just feel like I need to move back, So I did just make the decision to move back to LA, and it was harder to have a long distance partnership, and like I missed the training and all of that, but I still continued to take privates and still continuing to learn in other ways, taking other dance classes, and practicing on my own, which is actually when I started getting this idea for Zouk Babes, because I had a lot of solo technique work. Like, that's where a lot of my dance came from, just like by giving the tools and really taking those that knowledge and putting it into like very deep detail into my dance. That's how I really progressed a lot. So
that sounds wicked.
yeah, after that, at some point, I don't even know how long I've been back, like 2 years, 3 years or something. But after that, there was one point where I was connected with Allison. And then that's where I decided, okay, I want to, and like I said, I was missing training, I was missing this and that. And I went there to went to Australia, I went to Melbourne to learn more, to push myself, to consistently have someone to train with who can, actually, I was looking for somebody to kick my ass. So that was why, part of the reason why I went. So I would say, like, with all the development that I've done in my dancing, I have learned from many people. I have taken privates with many people, many different teachers, and many times. And I took a lot of risks.
Yeah.
A lot of risks that they're calculated risks, but I knew that if I was passionate enough about it, that I would find a way to make it work. So that would probably be like what really helped me develop in my dance continuously.